They say Saint Verena Hospital burned down 30 years ago. But when Ethan Ward stepped through its doors last night, the lights were still on. The beds were still warm, and the patients were still waiting. He entered the old hospital looking for a story. He didn't know he was walking back into his own death. Every corridor whispered his name, and every room remembered how he died. It was supposed to be just an abandoned hospital until the elevator moved by itself. And a nurse who died in 1991 whispered through the intercom, "Room 313, admitted." The rain had started long before midnight, turning the broken asphalt outside the old Saint Verena Hospital into a sheet of black glass. The building loomed at the end of the service road, its windows blind, its roofline jagged like a mouth missing teeth. For 30 years, no one had crossed its gate after dark, except thrill-seekers and lost drifters. Tonight, a journalist named Ethan Ward was one of them. He parked his car beneath a rusted emergency entrance sign, the red letters almost eaten away by time. His editor had given him 1 week to deliver a piece on urban legends of abandoned places. Saint Verena was supposed to be the crown jewel, the hospital where an unexplained fire had killed 23 patients, and where, according to rumor, the last nurse still roamed the halls waiting for help that would never come. Ethan stepped out, camera slung over his shoulder, flashlight in hand. The rain whispered across his jacket. The air smelled of iodine and rot. When he pushed the iron gate, it screamed like a living thing. Inside the courtyard, weeds had swallowed the benches. A single gurney lay overturned near the fountain, its wheels half buried in mud. Lightning flashed, revealing graffiti scrawled across the entrance doors. "Do not open, she hears." Ethan half smiled. Perfect material. He clicked the camera on and began recording, narrating softly. Saint Verena Hospital, closed since 1991. Locals claim it's haunted by a nurse who refused to leave her post after the fire. Let's find out. The doors gave way with a low groan. His flashlight beam sliced through dust thick as fog. Hallways stretched in both directions, left toward the wards, right toward administration. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling. Somewhere deep inside, something metallic clattered. He called out, "Hello." No answer, only the echo returning slightly late, as if the walls had whispered it back. He moved down the left corridor. The floor tiles were cracked like old bones. Wheelchair tracks curved through the dust. On the wall hung faded signs: pediatrics, surgery, morgue. The last one pointed down a stairwell swallowed by darkness. Lightning flashed again, and for a split second, Ethan saw a reflection, like someone's eyes, at the far end of the hall. He froze, blinked, and it was gone. He steadied the camera. "Probably my light," he muttered, "or water on the glass." But as he walked, the air temperature dropped. His breath became visible. The smell of antiseptic grew stronger. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the hall amplified only his movement and not his breathing. He passed an old nurse's station. Charts lay scattered. Their ink bled into unreadable shapes. A cracked intercom sat on the counter. Out of habit, he pressed the talk button. "Station 3, report." The speaker crackled. Then a whisper. "Room 313. Ethan jerked his hand back. The intercom hissed. Silent again. He stared at it. No power, no lights, no hum, just dust. He checked his camera. The red rec light was still on. He laughed nervously. Okay. Either that was interference or someone's pulling a prank. He followed the sign toward the inpatient wing. The numbers climbed. 301, 302, 303. Each room door was half open, revealing skeletal beds and hanging IV tubes. Rainwater dripped through the ceiling tiles, tapping like fingernails. When he reached room 313, the door was shut. Unlike the others, its surface was clean, the brass nameplate polished. He aimed his flashlight at it. Faint scratches surrounded the handle, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. He turned the knob. The door opened an inch, and then stopped, as though something heavy pressed from behind. The smell hit him first. Burnt cloth and medicine. He pushed harder. Inside, the walls were blackened by soot. An old hospital bed sat in the center, sheets neatly folded. On the pillow rested a nurse's cap, untouched by ash. Ethan whispered to the camera, "This must have been the room where the fire started." Then the door slammed shut behind him. He spun, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't move. "Hey, anyone there?" His voice echoed flatly. The lights flickered. For a moment, dim bulbs overhead flashed to life. On the burned wall, behind the bed, a phrase appeared in faded red. "Stay with us." The bulbs burst, plunging the room into darkness again. Ethan's flashlight flickered wildly. He lifted it toward the bed and froze. A woman in a charred nurse's uniform was standing at the foot of it, her head tilted sharply to one side, eyes pale like wet glass. Her lips moved but made no sound. One hand clutched an old patient chart. The other reached forward, trembling. The flashlight died. Darkness. Only the sound of the intercom crackling faintly through the hallway. Room 313. Admitted. The silence after the intercom's whisper was almost physical, pressing against the cracked walls like a held breath. Ethan's flashlight sputtered once more, catching fragments of the room. The blackened bed frame, a chart fluttering against the wall, the nurse's cap now lying on the floor as if someone had dropped it only seconds ago. He forced himself to move. "It's just wiring," he told the camera, his own voice trembling. "Old circuits, nothing supernatural." But the handle finally turned. The door creaked open to a corridor that no longer looked abandoned. The grime was gone. The walls gleamed under fluorescent lights that shouldn't have had power. Somewhere, machines beeped faintly. The air smelled sharp, sterile, alive. Ethan stepped out and realized the dust on the floor had vanished. His own footprints were gone too. A nurse pushed a medication cart past him without looking up. Her shoes made no sound. In the glass panel of the nurse's station, Ethan saw his reflection, and hers. But when he turned around, there was no one behind him. He whispered, "This place isn't showing me ghosts. It's showing me the night of the fire." Down the hall, the elevator doors opened. A patient in a hospital gown stared out, face covered in burns. Behind him, orange light flickered like distant flames. The patient lifted a trembling finger toward Ethan. "You shouldn't be here." The doors shut before Ethan could speak. His camera flickered, date stamp flashing. July 18th, 1991, 11:47 p.m. The night the hospital burned. Panic clawed at him. He ran down the hall, past rooms where doctors moved like shadows. Some carried stretchers. Others stood frozen mid-step. Smoke curled along the ceiling, creeping toward him but never touching. Every sound was distant, like an echo from underwater. Screams, alarms, a woman calling for help. Then, from behind a half-open door, came a voice that was horribly real. "Please, save them." Ethan pushed it open. Inside was the nurse he had seen before, alive now, her uniform white, her eyes clear. She was trying to drag a patient from a burning bed. The flames licked the sheets, but didn't spread, suspended like ribbons of light. When she looked up at him, time seemed to stop. "You came back," she said softly. "You heard us." Ethan stammered. I'm not supposed to be here." The nurse stepped closer. "Then why do you have his face?" Before he could respond, the ceiling lights shattered. The illusion collapsed. The hallway rotted before his eyes again, paint peeling, smoke turning to dust. He fell to his knees, coughing. His flashlight picked up a broken nameplate on the floor. Head nurse, M. Ward, his last name. Ethan stumbled backward. The intercom crackled overhead, louder now, the same whisper repeating. Ward 313, patient unstable. Ward 313, admit the boy. He looked down at his camera screen. The timestamp returned to the present, 2021. But the video feed showed something impossible. It wasn't him holding the camera anymore. It was the nurse. Her burned hands were gripping it, pointing it toward the bed, where a teenage boy lay motionless, one who looked exactly like Ethan at 14. He dropped the camera, the screen shattering. The audio kept recording, capturing the faint sound of footsteps approaching behind him. Slow, barefoot, wet. He turned, nothing. Then the elevator chimed again. Its doors opened. Inside was that same nurse, now half charred, holding the camera he'd just dropped. Her voice came from everywhere at once. Every story needs an ending, Mr. Ward. Let's finish yours. The doors slid shut with him inside. The elevator shuddered as it descended, though no button had been pressed. Fluorescent lights flickered above Ethan's head, washing everything in the sickly green of an emergency lamp. Each floor number blinked past, B1, B2, until the display froze on B3, records and morgue. When the doors opened, a cold gust swept in, carrying the stench of metal and formaldehyde. The hallway was lined with file cabinets tipped on their sides, drawers yawning like open mouths. Tags hung from the handles, names scrawled in ink that had bled into the paper. Ethan stepped out. His flashlight caught something written across the wall in hospital marker. Every life filed. Every death misfiled. He whispered, Saint Verena basement, official storage. This is incredible. The recorder clicked as he spoke, though he hadn't touched it. Somewhere behind him, a typewriter began to clack, slow and deliberate. He followed the sound. A lone desk sat under a dangling light bulb that swayed, though there was no breeze. The typewriter keys moved by themselves, striking word one by one. Patient file. Ward, Ethan. Admitted, July 18th, 1991. Cause of death, smoke inhalation. He froze. That's impossible, he muttered. I wasn't even born then. A drawer slid open beside him. Inside lay hundreds of identical manila folders, each labeled Ward, E, each dated differently, each stamped, deceased. His hands trembled as he picked one up. Inside were black and white photos of a teenage boy lying on a hospital bed, eyes closed, soot on his skin. The background was unmistakable. Room 313. The intercom crackled overhead. Basement records. File completed. The typewriter stopped. Then, faint footsteps. Bare souls again, but more than one pair. He turned his light toward the darkness at the corridor's end. Shapes were emerging. Dozens of patients in gowns, faces burned or bandaged, eyes like dull mirrors. They moved silently, forming a half circle around him. Ethan stumbled back toward the elevator, pressing the button repeatedly. Nothing. The patients stood motionless. One of them, a little girl clutching a melted doll, stepped forward and spoke in a whisper that wasn't hers. We stayed when the fire came, so did you. I'm not one of you, Ethan shouted. She pointed at his reflection in a metal cabinet. He saw smoke stains around his collar, ash on his hands, marks he hadn't noticed before. His heartbeat thundered, yet his chest felt hollow. The girl smiled sadly. She's been waiting for you. The overhead lights burst, plunging the basement into total darkness, except for one thin beam from his flashlight, pointing straight to a door marked Archives. Something on the other side knocked 3 times, slow and deliberate. Ethan, breathing hard, stepped closer. He pushed it open. Inside were rows of shelves, stacked with patient charts. But at the far end, stood an old operating table. A single body lay on it under a blood-spotted sheet. The nurse was beside it, unburned now, eyes glistening. "Why are you showing me this?" he whispered. She lifted the sheet. The body underneath was his. Same jacket, same watch, eyes open and glassy. "You came back every decade," she said quietly. "You never leave. The fire resets, and you record it again. You think you're writing an article, but you're writing your autopsy." The floor shook. Alarms began to wail somewhere above. Smoke poured from vents that hadn't worked in 30 years. The nurse placed a hand on his chest. It passed halfway through him like through mist. "Admit it," she whispered. "You never made it out." Ethan stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, I escaped. I remember leaving." She smiled with pity. "Then why is your car still outside?" The sheet fell back over the corpse, and the lights went out.